We're going to be studying LIFO, FIFO, and weighted average methods for recording inventory. Here's the data we're going to use to illustrate how this works. We have beginning inventory, 200 units at $10 a unit. That's what it cost us in some prior period. We had 4 purchases during the year, 300 units at $11, and then the prices started going up with each purchase. And during the period we sold 1,000. It doesn't tell us which 1,000 we sold, but we can assume one of the 3 cost methods and allow us to assign the cost based on that, regardless of how the actual units were sold. We don't know which actual units were sold, but the cost method is allowed to assume a certain pattern and use it consistently over time. So let's start with the weighted average. If you want to get the average, you have to add up all the units that were available to be sold. So we could have sold everything in the beginning inventory, and we could have sold all 4 purchases. That would have been 1,300 units. And what would that cost have been? Cost of the beginning inventory is 2,000. Get the cost of each of those purchases, and then let's add up the cost of the beginning inventory and all of the purchases. To get the average, then, you divide the total cost of the goods available for sale by the number of units available to be sold. So you take the goods available, the units available to be sold, divided by the cost available to be sold, and you get the weighted average cost. So then, if you're going to get your cost of goods sold, your weighted average method, you would get how many units you sold times the cost of those units, and your cost of goods sold under weighted average would be 12,000. Let's do FIFO. FIFO is first in, first out. That means I'm going to assume that I'm going to sell my oldest cost layers first, and then my next oldest cost layer, and then my next oldest cost layer, until I've accounted for the full 1,000 that I sold. Alright, so let's get the oldest cost layer, the first in, first out. Do I have 1,000 units yet? No. Keep finding cost layers until you've accounted for the full 1,000. I've only counted for 500. Let's pull another layer. Now I've accounted for 900, so I only need another 100 from the next layer. The next layer has 250, but I only need 100 from it. And the cost of that layer, 13. So the cost of goods sold under FIFO is 11,400, and that's lower than the weighted average. Why is that? Because I'm assigning the cost from the earlier layers, which in this case happen to be lower cost. Let's do LIFO. For LIFO, I'm going to pick the most recent layers to assign to cost of goods sold. What's the most recent layer? The latest purchase is the most recent layer. Alright, so I need to get 1,000 units sold. I have 150. I'll pick the next layer. Keep going. How many do I have now? I don't have 1,000. Pick another layer. Let's see, how many do I have now? 800. So I need another 200. I don't need all of the next layer to get my 1,000, but I need 200 of it. So my cost of goods sold under LIFO is 13,600. And these add up to be 1,000 if you just want me to show you that, because those are the units sold. Well, I needed to make that 200, didn't I? Alright. So just to prove that that's working. So 12,500 after fixing the quantity here. Is higher than the other 2 methods. Why is that? Because I picked the later layers, and they were higher cost. So when prices are rising, as they were here, LIFO will give you a higher cost of goods sold. FIFO will give you a lower cost of goods sold, and weighted average will be somewhere in the middle. If prices were dropping, you would get the reverse pattern. LIFO would have the lowest cost of goods sold, FIFO would have the highest, and weighted average would be in between. Now, what is the impact on profits if you have a higher cost of goods sold? Well, higher expenses lead to lower profits. So FIFO will actually give you lower profits when prices are rising. And FIFO will give you higher profits when prices are rising because it gives you a lower cost of goods sold.